Hey there, guys, and welcome back to another episode of the Blaze TV podcast. It's Ed Kimberley here. My guest on this edition of the Blaze net minding setup ahead of the 2023-2024 season, Nolan Kent. Nolan, thank you so much for joining us, but I really appreciate you putting a little bit of time aside.
Hi, Ed. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
I'm going to wind back the years here, buddy, just a little bit, because when you have new guys come through the door, you got to do your due diligence on them, and you're immediately drawn to your junior career in Spruce Grove there, and you could tell from day one that you made a big impact. Did you kind of feel that when you were with the Saints there, you just hit the ground running?
Yeah, it was kind of a odd situation being a rookie in that league, being a goalie. There was no returning goalies on my team, so the starting job was wide open when I came right first week in Spruce Grove. So it was just a battle, and I think that what sort of helped me is I was sort of battle tested once the season began, and I got off to a good start and sort of carried that out throughout my first season, and then I had a great 2 years there in Spruce Grove. So
yeah, absolutely. It's almost like the junior career of dreams in some ways. And just for context as well, because I know that maybe not a lot of fans over here know a lot about the Alberta Junior League, but there are some big fish swimming around in that pond. I mean, in year one as a rookie, you're going up against Cale McCarr, for crying out loud, for example, and some other big boys there. So it's a really good standard of hockey, and I guess a league that's tailored a little bit more to guys that followed your path to the NCAA, though, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of upper end kids that are looking to go to college from Alberta. So like the likes of Cale McCarr, and then I had Ian Mitchell on my team, who is right now he's with the Chicago Blackhawks, and then a few other guys that have played some NHL games here recently. So there's been some great talent, and then you get some older guys who've spent some time in the Western Hockey League, and then it's a great league. It's a great developmental league, and I think it's just continuing to get better and better too, which is good to see. So.
For sure. I know in these scenarios, hockey players like to talk about the team more than their own individual accolades at times. But as a rook, coming in, grabbing that starter spot, playing a lot of hockey, you ended up top 5 in goal against, top 5 in save percentage in the league too. You're going to look back on that and go, actually, you know what? I did my job. I did really well that year, and it looked like it was a bit of a stepping stone as well to starting out as the number one guy in year 2, right?
Yeah, I had my team was really good in front of me for both years, but I'd say that the biggest thing is I just had a really strong D-core, and I think that the system we played allowed me to settle in, and I think that when I'm at my best, I'm going along with the team's defensive system. So I think that just knowing where the shots were coming from and the guys in front of me were just so reliable and dependable, it made my job easier than probably some other guys had throughout the league, just because we played such a sound system. And I think that was a big contributor to my success for both years, I'd say, for sure. So.
Well, they say, what do they say? Offense wins games and defense wins championships. And actually, in year one, you guys were pretty close to picking up some silver there. So I think you just came up a little short against Whitecourt in the semis. That was a good series.
Yeah, we had a good team, but Whitecourt was pretty. They were a pretty veteran team that year. They had a lot of good 20-year-olds and a few guys that were 19 and headed off to college next year. My old roommate, actually, Joseph Nardi, he was on that team. So there were some good players, and that was a hard rink to play into. So we came up short, and we probably didn't have a ton of expectations against Whitecourt just because they had such a strong year, but I thought we played quite well. So
that said, year 2, I mean, if you read the season previews, there's a bunch of those out there. They were all coming down to, Spruce Grove going to have a great season. A lot of guys pumping your tires there as well, Nolan. Did you feel that there was a little bit more expectation going into year 2?
Yeah, I'd say so. I think that from the beginning of the year, we had a coaching change, so there was a bit of adjustment period there, but I thought we adjusted well and we played some really good hockey. There was a lot of teams that were pretty strong that year. Like Okotoks was really strong, Brooks was really strong. A few other teams up north, like Fort McMurray and Whitecourt, are always strong too. So nothing was guaranteed, and I think we almost felt overlooked a little bit too, just because a lot of teams have picked people had picked Okotoks or Brooks to take it all that year, and I think we had that belief just because there was such a strong core group of guys coming back that we'd have a good chance of winning the league that year, and we evidently did, which was really good to see. But yeah, it was an awesome year, and it was a great way to cap off my junior career for sure. So.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I got to talk to you a little bit about that season because it was pretty impressive. But I think in some ways it was a bit of a test for you as well, right? Because you started great, you hit the ground running, you picked up an injury, so you're out for a good chunk of the year, and then kind of had to rehab as quick as you could, get back and join the boys. And it was almost a little bit like if you just look at some of the game sheets there, you picked up right where you left off before you got hurt.
Yeah, it was. So I was having a great start to the season, and then fortunately injuries happened. I tore some cartilage in my knee, so I had to get that repaired. So that was a 3.5-month recovery, I believe. So yeah, that was it was mid-season, which was unfortunate, and missed out on a big chunk of games. I think I played 20 or so games that year in the regular season, but the fortunate part was I got back before the end of the regular season, so I could try and get my game back before the playoffs and hopefully give us the best chance to win. So yeah, it was a unfortunate middle of the season there, but everything happens for a reason, I believe. So
yeah, I mean, even though it was a kind of a condensed regular season for you, still, you kind of swept the individual accolades there in save percentage, goal against average. That was nice. Obviously, 97 points. I mean, if you see a team in a conference hit 97 points, that shows that they were pretty dominant. And when you talk about the season before, you talk about, you were talking about a couple of teams like Brooks, for example, that were really strong. Did it feel like Spruce Grove were the dominant force in the division that year?
Yeah, I'd say so for points, but there's about, I remember, I think 3 or 4 teams that were pretty, could beat each other on any night. But yeah, I'd say we were up there for sure. The North Division is probably, I think we finished first in the division that year.
Yep.
There was a couple teams on our trail. So yeah, our division was pretty strong. The South had a couple top end heavy teams, and then there was a bit of a drop off, but our division was really strong. So,
and then as is so often the way in the playoffs, it looks like everybody kind of just kicked it up a notch. And again, we're talking about you a little bit here, Nolan. So 4 shutouts, 158, 923. That's pretty ridiculous, but if you don't mind me saying, was that some of the best hockey you've played, do you think?
Yeah, I'd say I had some really good games in the playoffs there, and I'd say I'd had some shaky ones as well too. But obviously, being on such a strong team too, your numbers probably get inflated a little bit. But you also have to make the saves, like when you don't get a shot for 5 to 10 minutes sometimes too. So there's an element to that that's difficult. But there's also some positives of playing in front of such a strong team as well too. So
yeah, and obviously that culminated in the Alberta Junior League title. And for context as well, how you guys went about that. You get a bye in the first round for winning top of the division. You sweep Grand Prairie, you sweep Whitecourt. You went 4-1 against Okotoks, and I think they had a better regular season record than you guys. I think they had like 100, 105, 106 points, something like that, which is crazy. So do you feel like that whole team just kind of found that extra gear in the postseason?
Yeah, I think it was a pretty motivating factor because there's about 10 to 12 players that were there the year before when we lost to Whitecourt. And then just playing Okotoks in the regular season there, I think we lost them both times. So I think that was, and they've been picked to win the league basically the whole year, having guys like Jacob Bernard Docker and Nick Blank Mecklenburg, so they had some really good players. So yeah, I think that was a motivating factor for us for sure. And then just the fact that yeah, it was probably our last year together as a full group. So
was it always the NCAA route that was on your mind? Obviously, you've kind of got a scholarship there in Northern Michigan. Great hockey program, by the way. But was it always college hockey that you were thinking about?
I'd say no, but I was a bit of a late bloomer compared to a lot of kids. So I think I hit my stride probably at about 15 or 16 is when I started to really see a big progression in my game. And being a smaller guy too, I always thought like the school path might be a better option for me too, personally. So I thought like maybe I could have an option to go the Western League maybe at 18 or 19, which would have been a little late. So I thought at that point it was just a smart decision to go to school and get my education. And it's just a great experience going to down south and playing some more hockey too. So.
Oh, for sure. And there's some good hockey in that division that you dropped in as well. Some big teams play around in there.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, that was a great experience. I spent 4 years at Northern Michigan University, and then this past year at University of Alaska Anchorage. So yeah, two completely different schools and two completely different experiences, but both very rewarding in their own right. So
yeah, I guess we should probably talk about that a little bit, because I guess year one, I don't know. I don't know. I guess it depends on the program and the guy. Maybe less expected of you as a freshman there, but year two, you look like things were going pretty sweet. You're playing a lot of games, keeping net real well, and then the world kind of just pumped the brakes there, and COVID hit before any postseason, and I mean that must have been a little frustrating to end what was a pretty good year for you that way.
Yeah, so the COVID sort of shut down the league there. We had just lost to our rival Michigan Tech in a heartbreaking triple overtime game. So, but yeah, it was heartbreaking for everyone, and gave me a lot of time to reflect. And then heading into the next year was kind of a debacle a little bit, just with all the regulations that were put in place and no fans. And I'm sure that everyone was going through similar scenario, but I actually ended up having another knee surgery the same year. So it was kind of a bit of a nightmare year for myself. So it was just it was at that point, it was a really tough year for not only me, but I felt like everyone involved. So
yeah, I was it elective to get that done at that time? Because I know guys that maybe they were wearing an injury long, and they were kind of playing through it, realized, oh, I'm going to get extended recovery time here. It's not going to affect my game, really. It's not going to affect my CV anyway, because everyone around me is going to be in the same boat. So was that kind of what you were doing there?
Yeah. So I started off the year, and then I ended up actually tearing it partially again. So that was really difficult. So I continued to try and play on it, and it just wasn't getting any better. Or it was pretty painful, and I was getting cortisone shots and a couple other things, and it just wasn't. I didn't feel like I was at my best. So, and I was dealing with a lot of pain too. So I thought at that point, I thought it was just best to get surgery and get it fixed and try and get myself right. So
for sure, I think that's a pretty wise move there. And then after a couple of years of, I guess, rehab, working on the knee, trying to get back to full fitness, you've got the COVID thing disrupting everything. You took the decision to transfer. You were just talking about playing in Alaska Anchorage. Was that kind of, I mean, what sparked that? Was it a case of wanting a bit of a fresh start after all the injuries and the COVID and stuff?
Yeah, I think it was just a case of wanting a fresh start. Part of it was the schooling aspect of it. So
sure.
I graduated from Northern Michigan already, so I was able to do my MBA up here in a year. And then probably the other aspect of it too was just some more opportunity. There's fresh team here, rebooting the program after the COVID shut down. And so I think it was just a bunch of aspects tied together, and I think it worked out great for myself. I had a pretty good year and had a lot of fun too. So I think it was just a bit of a rejuvenation for myself a little bit. So
yeah, we all need that sometimes. I think a lot of people can relate to that. And you kind of emerged as the top goalie. When you look back on this season, was it kind of a bit of a toss up going in? Were you told, all right, you're gonna have to fight with this other guy for this, and you came out on top? And that, I guess that must have been pretty, if it was the case, pretty motivating, right? I mean, I know that would light a fire up under me if I've got to really graft for something like that.
Yeah, I think heading in, I wasn't really sure how the goalie rotation was going to work, and our coach liked to play one guy one night and play another guy another night. So you're battling for a start every weekend, and I think that was good for myself just to try and stay on top of things a little bit more. Than you learn from experiences from the past a little bit too. So and then the other aspect of it too was we were a new team, so they wanted to give everyone a fair chance and an opportunity to prove themselves. So I think the fact that everyone just had an opportunity to play at some point, I think it was good for myself to try and prove that I can still play. So
I think you proved that for sure. And just finally on the NCAA side of things, because I mean, I always try and learn a little off guys from these as well. Independent schools, that's a little bit different in terms of how those games work in the NCAA. Can you enlighten me a little bit on how that works? It's not like division hockey, as far as I understand.
Yeah. So and within the NCAA, there's conferences. So when I was in Northern Michigan, we were in the WCHA conference for 3 years, and then they reformed an old conference called the CCHA, and then for my senior year, we were in that league. And then there's a bunch of different other conferences throughout the U.S., and there's these independent schools that compete against all the Division I programs and play a ton of games, but they don't have a league of their own due to multitude of different reasons. But for example, Alaska was in the WCHA with Northern, so I played them before, but once the COVID shut down and they reformed the CCHA, Alaska was no longer so in that conference. So yeah, so it allows the independent teams the freedom to play whoever can fit into their schedule, and whoever the other teams can fit the independent schools into their schedule. But the only downside of being an independent school, I'd say, is probably not having a league for a tournament bid. So you have to you have to be a pair rise, have a high enough record to be a pair rise recipient of a bid for the NCAA tournament. So there's a lot of little complications to it. It's a big mathematical formula that I don't quite understand, but yeah, so that's the gist of it probably. So
no, I appreciate that. Hey, you learn something every day, so I appreciate it. Thanks, Nolan. And then that kind of brings us up to date. And you've taken the decision to turn pro. You've taken the decision, obviously, to come over to the UK and to Coventry. Why did you choose the Blaze?
I think it was just a great opportunity. I've always looked at the British League as something that would be an attainable level for me to play at, and I actually have some family ties to England. Both my grandparents immigrated to Canada from England, so and then I think it's a great league. It's growing, and talking to Coach Stewart, I think it was a great fit for myself, and the confidence that he talked about with me and my potential. I think that was a big deciding factor for myself too. So
awesome, that's cool. So tell us a little bit about what kind of goalie we're getting. And goalies come in all shapes and sizes these days. One thing that stood out was I don't know if you remember your old GM Rob Sklarek there. He said in It was 40 years of the business. You've never seen a guy that works as hard in net as you do. Is that kind of a bit of an indication of what you like between the pipes?
Yeah, I'd say first and foremost, I like to pride myself on being a competitive guy. I think that boils down to how you prepare in practice and how you compete in practice. So treating every puck like it's a game, I think that's what's got me to this point today, and I think that's what has made me somewhat successful. So, and then I think what makes me my best when I'm playing my best, I'm pretty calm and I'm tracking pucks well, and I'm getting to pushing the spots early, so it could be nice and square to the shooter and just make nice simple saves. I'm not the biggest goalie per se, but I'd like to say I'm one of the most competitive probably. So.
Yeah, it seems like, when you talk about like competing for pucks, a lot of guys, when they get a little bit scrambly, can, get a little rough around the edges in terms of, the desperation there. But I kept coming back to like clips of you, and it just seemed like, I don't know whether it was just how your agent cut it together or whatever, but it just seemed like you were calm. There was nothing like loose. There were no holes that shouldn't have been there. Everything was nice and compact and tight. So I guess it's a real battle to keep that balance, but you seem to hit it, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, so I think that just boils down to a lot of training over the years and trying to develop some sort of a base in the net. And then if there is some sort of a scramble play or have to make a desperation save, I'd like to hope that I have enough athleticism and will to try and make a few of those saves that you probably shouldn't. So, and I think that's how you can be successful. So.
And it sounds like from what you said earlier, you've done, a little bit of research about the league. Are you one of these guys that comes into a season setting goals for themselves, or do you just kind of take it as it comes?
I think personally, try and set some long-term goals and then some short-term goals as well too. So I think just the biggest thing for myself I've learned over the last few years specifically is probably taking it day by day and never taking it for granted, right? So you just got to focus on what you have to do that day, and hopefully the rest will take care of itself. So.
Right on. I think there's a little bit of wisdom rolling around in those words. Nolan, I really appreciate you putting some time aside. I'm not going to take up any more because I know you're in the locker room right now. You're doing a little bit of coaching, and I think you're still doing some schooling as well. How are you spending the rest of your summer?
Yeah, I actually have 2 classes left this summer, so I'm spending part of the summer up here in Alaska. It's really beautiful. It's right up in the mountains, so. And then I'm heading home here in a couple of weeks, back to Alberta, and just continuing to train and skate. So yeah, so I've got about 3 or 4 more weeks of school, and then and then I've graduated. So then I'm done. So.
And then before you know it, it'll be August. You'll be packing your bags and getting on a plane to the West Midlands.
Yeah, for sure. I'm so super excited. So.
We're really looking forward to having you over. It looks a little bit like Spruce Grove in that second year. We had a good year last year in Coventry, and I think we're building up to something. So we've got our fingers crossed that's next season.
Yeah, I hope so. And just really excited to get over there and get to work. So.
Well, I think that's a good place to end. Nolan Kent, thank you so much for joining us. And guys, once again, really appreciate you logging in and making the Blaze TV podcast a part of your day. More episodes coming soon with some more of the new guys and some of the returning guys as well. So for now, take care.